Hey, eighth graders, it's Wednesday, May the 13th, and you guys are going to be reading about Nero and Vespasian um, this week. And today I wanted to talk about something that happens just a little bit after the invasion of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. And that is a very famous historical event that probably you've all heard about, maybe you don't know much about, which is the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. There it is. Uh, and the the um, the two cities that are most associated with the explosion of this mountain is Pompeii and Herculaneum, and those two cities were buried in ash. Somewhere between maybe like 13 to 20 feet of ash descends on those cities, and lots of people are killed, obviously, from that. And if there's any silver lining to that tragedy, it's that it preserved very well the city for many years, so that eventually archaeologists could come in and look into the city and see things that we didn't know before. Right? There's so much stuff gets lost because of time and erosion and all of that stuff, but because the ash um, landed on the city, it kind of preserved it in a way that most Roman cities were not preserved. So, 79 AD, the some maybe sometime around August, even they started hearing rumblings from the mountain, and then I think in October it finally blew, and it kept on exploding, and people watched it from across the bay, and like, what's going on? They finally came in via boat to see if they could save anybody. We have two accounts of the explosion, but they come pretty far after the event, maybe like 25 years after the event. So, how good is your memory 25 years after? But somewhat reliable, we could say. And one guy came across on a boat, and they had to put pillows on top of their head uh, because rock was still falling from the sky even after the initial explosion, and so there's that kind of those accounts that tell us just some of the natural wonders of it all. There was a tsunami that it came with it, and all those kind of things make for an interesting story. But um, what it does for us, it preserves in time the city, and we get to see what the average Roman life was like in 79 AD. We get the inscriptions on the walls that looks the graffiti. We can see that over on the left hand side here. That graffiti preserves just kind of like what people were thinking. It's almost like ancient Twitter in some ways because we get just really random bits of knowledge that we don't have anywhere else. And just, hey, this is what I did today kind of stuff. And uh, yeah, it's pretty fascinating, and in some ways it's very boring. It's like, hey, today I ate soup, but for us that's helpful because we get to see what their life was like. And we also get some of these like startling images of people mid action, right? People moving, and then lava falling on top of them, and we have them in sort of the middle of doing something, and that's kind of strange too and haunting. These pictures we have here. This is probably the most famous one of a guy sort of mid movement, and so we have a lot of bodies from Mount Vesuvius, and some we were able to look at their bones and see what kind of food they ate, and see what kind of nutrition they had, and what kind of diseases they had. It's really important to for historians and archaeologists. So, what can we know about a day in the life of a normal Roman? Well, some of the things we can figure out from Pompeii and Herculaneum is that there were lots of restaurants, and maybe not like what we think of as a restaurant, but almost like takeout diners and those kind of things. They ate out a lot. They didn't eat most of their food at home. They would eat cheap meals on the go, um, and there's lots of them everywhere. People just would stop little corner booths in the streets and eat. They love their baths. We knew this, I think, before, but uh, they had lots of baths, public baths, private baths. If you were rich, you didn't have to go to the public baths, but um, they they enjoyed getting clean, and they would do that together. And a warm soak was something they looked forward to. That was kind of their activity. Life was scary for kids. We learned that a lot of kids have um, diseases, and we also learned that most kids don't live past the age of 10. They're just any old kind of disease would most likely kill you. And so, the strong survived and the weak died. And if you made it past 10, you're fairly confident to live a long life. But those first 10 years, perilous. You didn't know if your kid was going to live or die. A lot of death, child death. One thing we do learn is that they did have kind of a perverse mind. The Romans, a lot of their graffiti and artwork we have preserved from here, and they gravitated to things that were pretty gross and perverse. And we just sort of see the difference between sort of the Christian mindset and the pagan Roman mindset that Christianity is going to replace. Uh, they, they weren't. Their minds were just sort of obsessed with all the darker things in life, and they weren't very shy about it. They would put it out there on their graffiti, in their pictures. Today, things that we would be embarrassed to see, they put it on their in their kitchen, or they put them in their living rooms. Those kind of paintings that would just um, should make you wince. Um, Most of life we all learned that was lived outdoors. They didn't spend a lot of time inside. It doesn't seem like their living quarters for most people, unless you were rich, were pretty small. So they mostly spent their time outside, and they would come in to sleep in maybe little apartments, and then go back outside again. And of course, that's easy to do maybe in the Mediterranean, where it's a little bit nicer and warmer, and in the winter it wasn't so cold. So life was lived outdoors. We learned that. Here we also have tons of artwork preserved. Most of Roman art, unless it's like a famous statue or something, was destroyed in 2,000 years from then to here. But uh, we have lots of mosaics and average citizen artwork, not just like the the emperors and the rich people, but just the commoners and what they had on their walls, and we have a lot of that preserved in Pompeii. So, in some ways, we say it's a tragedy, of course, but in other ways, we could say, well, it's good we now know what Roman life was like. It's pretty well preserved in the ashes of Pompeii and Herculaneum from Mount Vesuvius erupting. So, 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius explodes, a Roman tragedy. We get to benefit from it because now we get to know what life was like in ancient Rome for the average person. We knew for the rich and mighty what life was like and who they were, but now we get to see the average Joe and average Jane and what they were like. So, kind of an interesting tragedy, but also a interesting find. The city of Pompeii, city of Herculaneum. All right, have a good day, guys.